All right, wait for YouTube to pick it up.
Mm.
There we go. I think we're live, Alexis. There you have it. Hello,
Cool.
everyone. How's it going? All right. I'm going to send you this link. And everybody, hello. I'm Marshall. This is Alexis. And I have Alexis very busy, hard at work, sharing our link to the socials. Now, you're going to see this video in your news feed. And the very first thing you want to do is click it and go to YouTube, because YouTube is where you're going to get to interact with us, ask us questions, share your stories, all of that stuff. And I've got YouTube up on my other monitor here, so anything that you say to us on YouTube, I will see it instantly, and we will be very excited and happy to answer your questions in real time. So there you have it. Whether you're coming to us from Instagram or Facebook, I want to welcome you here. Today we're talking about time after time. I love that song, by the way, Cyndi Lauper. But we're going to talk about all kinds of things that have to do with time, including, hopefully, our favorite songs on time. Alexis, how's it
Sounds good
going?
to me.
How's it going?
It's going.
Good, good. Well, awesome. We actually, I want to start by kind of asking people, asking you, what the heck is time? I think we're surrounded by time. We live in time. Time is always on our minds. It's on our wrist. You know, time, time, time. But if you
You
ask,
know, like so I feel like I might be the worst person to ask that particular question, honestly, because I'm like, well, time is an illusion, time stretches, time isn't real, time
right,
is different depending on where you are and how you're experiencing reality. So like
right.
I have like this sort of like quantum kind of experience of it. What about you?
Well, I see it from more of like a physics perspective, and it's interesting that you
Okay.
mentioned the word quantum, because quantum is like the smallest packet of information or data that you can possibly have, and I think time is like that. For me, time is there are moments in time, and just like there are rooms in your house, and you can move from room to room, that's movement through space.
Mm.
And if you look at time, think of time as like I've heard it described as a frame on a film that would have been fed through an old video projector, right? The old movie strips, the old film strips, and you had frame, 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 frame. Well, each of those frames is a moment in time. And just as you can go from room to room in your house, you should theoretically be able to go from frame to frame in that strip to different moments in time. In fact, the two are actually related. That was one of Einstein's great conclusions, which is that there's actually three dimensions of space, right? Up, down, right, left, forward, backwards, whatever, right? X, Y, Z axis. And then
Yeah.
there's a fourth dimension of time. So that movement through space is also movement through time, and vice versa. They're actually kind of all jumbled together. They're interrelated. They're woven together. And I think that has incredible implications both for the physical realm, and I think for you, you're kind of a spiritualist. And I've always wondered, how does anyone see into the future? We can look at it from a scientific perspective. We can look at it from physics, right? Cause and effect. And we
Yeah.
know that these conditions create these conditions, create these conditions. From a physical perspective, we can forecast the future because everything has this predictable formula and it kind of just works out according to the math. But
Yeah.
what about this other realm that is outside the realm of science? We can't measure it, but it's there.
And that's why I'm like, I don't know if I'm the right person to ask this question because I like what you talked about with the question of, time moments being frames. I feel that. I actually
Yes.
would say I feel that.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel sometimes like I'm when I'm remembering a moment that I experienced, I feel like I'm actually re-experiencing the moment.
Yeah, you're going back in that
Um,
film strip to that frame and looking at it again.
Sometimes, yeah, it's not every single time that I'm doing that because it requires a little bit of more active involvement, but it feels to me like it's more than remembering. Um, and then I don't feel like, well, my experience of space is different too. So I don't feel like anything is. I feel like all that we look at in our reality is illusion, which is like a very Buddhist Hindu kind of understanding of stuff. But practically, I don't think that most people are walking around having this like boundless experience. I think most people are much more, living and practically like we have to, we have our lives have a beginning and they have an end.
Hmm.
Each our lifetime is like that, and the way that our reality is organized is like that. And so it does have, even though we have these moments that we could in theory jump around in, we still have this kind of march that's happening
Hmm.
that's kind of linear. And
Yeah.
so, and there's also a limits to it, I mean, like I have sparkles in my hair. you know, I have crinkles in my skin. Like
Right.
those weren't always there. And that's cool, but that's also a mark of moving through it. And so, you know, I guess like I think about when I'm thinking about time and thinking about how we're living our lives, I think about how we're spending time. And so I
Hmm.
guess my question to you would be like how are you spending your time? How do you spend most of your time,
Hmm.
do you think?
Right.
Do you like how you're spending your time?
Right. I spend most of my time a lot like a firefighter in an inferno in a high-rise building, going from one fire to the next. You know?
Oh dear.
No.
That sounds terrible.
Actually, I think there's a lot of people who are doing that, and the problem is, if you're going from room to room fighting fires, you're not actually living your life. You're just putting out fires. And that's one of the things, and that's where, because you referred to this whole Buddhist mindset, where we've got to be a little bit more mindful and intentional with the things that we do, and we have to slow down a bit to do that, to savor and appreciate what we're doing, because you're right, it is terrible. But I know tons of people who are just going, from fire to fire to fire, and they don't have time to enjoy a sunset or a sunrise or even stop to smell a rose, both
So,
figuratively and
but
literally.
but do you think that's like do you think that's a product of like how society is structured, or do you think that's how like we're do you think it's more of like economic structures, or do you think it's more like cultural things? Obviously those things kind of interact and
Yeah.
are mushy, but I guess my question is like I feel like there are some expectations that we place on certain parts of our lives. Like when we're parenting, if we're parenting, when we're seeking out like the promotion or something in our careers, and so we end up kind of directing our time in a certain way. And that can be a time suck.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think
So what do you think?
it's definitely economic, and it is cultural. They reinforce each other. And here's the deal: There's this economic law that's kind of unrelated, but the principle I think is the same, and it's called the iron law of wages. And the iron law of wages, from an economist from like the 17th century, a guy named David Ricardo, basically was like, wages will always fall to subsistence level. If you have more workers than there are jobs,
Mm.
and if you don't have a job, you starve to death and die. The wages will always fall because anytime you want higher wages, the employer can just say, nope, I'm going to hire this person over here. And so the wages always fall to the lowest, to subsistence level. People will work for what they need to subsist. And it's the same thing with time. And one of the ways that people try to beat the iron law of wages is they say, well, I'll get a second job, or my spouse will work, or my children will work. And that gets you ahead only for a short time, but guess what? That iron law weighs down. And what ends up happening is in a generation or so, now you are required for yourself, your spouse, your children to work and to work a second job on top of that just to subsist. And it's the same thing with time. It's the same mechanic I think is happening, is that we have spread ourselves so thin. We are trying to give our children the best opportunity to have their best life ever. So we're cramming their day full of activities. We are trying to do our own things and our own activities. We're trying to maintain a house, maintain a car, go to the doctor, go to the dentist, all these things. And we just can't do it. We can't
But
do
do
it.
you think that I feel like that's changed a little bit with the way that the pandemic has affected us. I feel like the pandemic ne necessarily put a pause on like everything.
Hmm.
And so, like people were forced to pull
Yeah.
out of a lot of activities. They were forced, to go home, sometimes under duress and um
Yeah.
sometimes because, the work became remote, but it necessarily slowed things down. And I found a lot of it was kind of like a mixed bag for a lot of parents where some parents found it really restful and wonderful, and then other parents found it like, oh God, this is awful because now I'm just dealing with my kid all the time.
Yeah. Now I'm alone
Um,
with my thoughts, my existential
but
reality.
but this is an interesting question because I actually liked it. Like I kind of liked the slowdown because it took this pressure off, and then it gave people back more control over their days.
Mm,
I didn't feel like okay, so I have two kids, and they're kind of at that age where they should start, they should start participating in those activities. But we haven't forced that because my oldest child just is not really like they really want to be in control of their time.
mhm,
And so my husband and I, we decided like, well, this is what they want to do, so we're going to support them and allow them to have that freedom and make choices. And so when they choose an activity, it's a very conscious and intentional choice. And I feel like that's kind of that's what this pandemic, this period of time has allowed for us, is that we've been given back or the
mhm,
possibility of intentionality, which you mentioned before.
mhm.
Um, yeah, that kind of dovetails in one of the things that we wanted to talk about. Do you have like poor time habits?
Only when I'm working. Only when I'm working. Um, I am one of those people where I'm obsessed with time. I think it's a OCD or something that I've got going on. I have really amazing dead reckoning skills long before there was GPS and even MapQuest and Waze and all these little apps on your phone. I could predict often to the minute when I would arrive at a front door somewhere. I just had this innate natural intuition. I can still do it, but it's no longer impressive because everybody assumes I'm just using Google Maps or Apple Maps.
Mm.
I used to people like, whoa, really? You know, just blow their minds. It was a fun thing I would do, you know. Um, yeah, it's one of these things. So do I waste time? Absolutely. But to quote the Marquis de Sade, time you enjoy wasting is not wasted time. And when I am
Mm.
wasting time, what I'm actually doing is I'm investing my energy into other things that I value, even if it's not what I'm supposed to be focused on at the time. Maybe I'm supposed to be doing a chore, or maybe I'm supposed to be working, and instead I'm putting my time into something else that I want to invest it in. So in that way, I don't think I waste a whole lot of time, but depending on your perspective, I might be a person who wastes a lot of time. To me, I don't waste a lot of time, but others will say I do.
Well, I think that's, I mean, that's an interesting question that you raise or issue is the question of productive time and what is productive time and does it need to be productive?
Right,
I mean, that's a very capitalist understanding of
right, and I hate it.
resource usage.
I hate
And
it.
I think that's ridiculous. It's terrible. Um, but, you know, that's another thing that I feel like we've been allowed to reassess during the last few years is that we've been allowed to reassess, okay, is rest, is fun a waste of time? No,
No,
absolutely not.
yeah,
Because we can't be productive unless we rest. And we can't be productive unless we have fun. We have to have joy and these kinds of things. And so, using our time in different ways actually helps us be more efficient and more effective.
right.
One of the habits that I really like that I used it to great success in college, which allowed me to have a lot of rest and to have a lot of fun was I would just batch and block, um, which is when I would do like I would say, okay, I'm gonna do this set of tasks in this block of time and then just get it done and then I can like move on to the other thing. So I didn't waste a lot of energy trying to like, piece different parts together. But obviously that may or may not work for different people's
Hmm.
lifestyles. I mean, it may actually, in different points in time, it may make more sense to do a little bit, you know,
Yeah,
just kind of depends on where you are. So I feel like I'm a little hesitant to even say that there's like a bad time habit.
yeah, yeah.
Like, I don't know what that would really be.
People are just doing what they value and what they enjoy, and this is where we get into what I talked about in our a couple weeks ago. We talked about this topic was making time. I like to say you only have the time that you make. And what that means is people make choices with their time, and that communicates to you absolutely everything you need to know. Because if a person
Yes.
wants to spend time with you, they will make the time to
Yes.
spend with you. They will find a way, come hell or high water, to do it.
Yes.
And if they consistently have an excuse, oh, I don't have time, I've got this or this, then that tells you where you're at on their hierarchy. It's and it is what it is.
You just found the thing that bugs the shit out of me. I was like, what is it? No, it's that. It drives me up the wall when someone says, "Oh, I want to hang out with you. I want to hang out with you. I want to hang out with you," and you're like, "All right, well, let's schedule something," and they're like, "Okay," and then it just doesn't happen. It's like, oh, I thought we had like a, like you could meet with somebody, you have fun or whatever, and it's clear that you're enjoying yourselves. You're like, and I'm not talking about like a romantic thing. I'm talking about just like a friend
Right,
thing.
right.
And and they just like ghost you. And it's like, WTF, what just happened? I don't know.
Right.
Um, and it really bugs me. I would rather that somebody just grow a pair and say like, you know what? Like I don't have the spoons or I don't have the energy to put into this right now. It's not that I don't
Yeah.
value, it's just that and just clearly articulate that. And I think that that's something that I have tried to cultivate because I went through some chronic illness stuff. I realized like, no, I don't have spoons. I just don't have spoons. I just can't do it.
Right.
So, seeing like, okay, what are these priorities and how much time can I allot to these priorities? And then and just clearly articulating that and that being a way to show respect and honor of other people's time and energy.
Right.
'Cause yeah, it really bugs me when people are like, "Oh yeah, I really want to hang out," and then they just disappear. It's like, dude, seriously?
Yeah.
Couldn't you just say like, you know what? I like have a really full plate. I'm just not gonna be able to meet with you. Like I have a lot more respect for someone if they say, you know what? Like I'm
Yeah.
full up.
Right.
Just tell me that. I
Well,
just want to know.
it's like how poor people are more charitable than rich people. You know, when you think
Mm,
about per capita, how much of a person's fortune are they spending on charitable things? Poor people by
mm.
far are way more charitable than rich people, and I think that's because they know what it feels like to be in need. They understand poverty, they appreciate it. And it's the same way with time. People who are time poor, I actually have more success finding time with them, the busiest people,
Mm.
than people who, they have all kinds of time. Maybe they don't have jobs. That's the best one. The people who are completely unemployed, but they never have time. That blows my mind. But I think it's the same principle at work. People who have a lot going on, they understand I've got to manage my time, but I value these relationships, so I'm going to go ahead and put the time in. I'm going to make this investment because I'm going to get a return on it that's worth it. And, you know,
Yes.
yeah,
And this is why calendars are important.
right?
Like I know we had this conversation. Marshall doesn't use a calendar.
I hate calendars. Hate them. Keep it all up here.
But I have to because if I don't, I'll forget it and then I won't do it. So I put my friend dates I put them in my calendar because if I don't, it won't happen or I'll forget that I scheduled it or like I'll double book myself. And so as a way to, show respect to people, that's what I do.
Right? No, I agree, and I appreciate that. Not everybody has the hang up that I have about using planners and calendars and so on. And I will be the first to tell you that I think my aversion to using a planner is it's an artificial self-imposed whatever issue. It's yeah, yeah. There's no character flaw imputed to a person who doesn't use who uses a planner. Anyway, I can't speak. I'm tongue-tied here, but it's all good. Um, but yeah, that's my take on it. I want to take a look at some of these other questions that I had
Do
come up
you
with. Go ahead.
Well, so what I was going to ask is just how would you I mean because like a lot of people are really busy these days. Like
Yeah.
how do you think what would be a way that we could get back more control of our time? How
hmm
could we either as individuals or like in a collective way, in a community way?
Yeah, here's why do we keep going back to Buddhism, right? But I think doing things with more intention and slowing down while you do them will give you the feeling that, hey, I've got a handle on this. We
Yeah.
tend to evaluate our day by how much we got done, and we're supposed to have this, like again, we've produced this much stuff, this much value is what we produced for others, and if we made this much money or we worked this many hours, oh, that's great. But how much time did I enjoy out of my day? How much did I live today? Because at the end of your life, nobody sits there and says, "Oh yeah, I made my boss millions of dollars," you know. No, that's not what you think about when you're in the retirement home waiting to check out. What you think about is, what of me is going to survive into the next generation? Will my children and grandchildren live according to the values that I lived by? What memories will they have of me? Will I be remembered as someone who contributed something of value to society, or am I just another statistic? And the way to answer that is not by toiling ceaselessly, but by forming relationships and bonds, and I think taking the time to appreciate and savor those things. It's kind of like, I guess, a kid in a candy store.
So,
Kid in a
yeah,
candy
so
store eats
then,
all the candy real fast, whereas a person who maybe only gets one piece of candy savors that candy and can remember it, and has a greater appreciation for it.
yeah, I mean, so then, a lot of people talk about mindfulness and they talk about mindfulness practices and things, but implementing them in a practical way, it can be a little overwhelming or a little tricky, I think, for some people. They don't, it's not necessarily an intuitive thing for a lot of people. And so I think this is a good time to just kind of I think this is a good time to talk about some of those ways that you can implement these things really practically. And so I just want to maybe share like a couple of ways that I do that. Uh, one of the things that I like to do is I like to be aware of the things that are going on around me. Just like a practice of observing the things. And specifically, I look for things that inspire wonder or awe or are just beautiful in some way, or just kind of amazing. And
Yeah.
amazing doesn't necessarily mean something like big or crazy. It can just be like a bird,
Hmm.
it can just be the way a flower is in that moment. But just noticing those little small things can be really helpful. Because I think a lot of people, they get like stuck in their heads and think, oh, I need to be like really like out there thinking about these like philosophical big things, but it doesn't have to be big stuff. It can be small stuff. Um, and and so I think that that's one like really easy way. It's just like noticing the things that are beautiful around you where you are, however small they might be, because there's something there. There's always something, and it's just training yourself to
Yeah.
notice them.
Yeah.
How do you slow down, Marshall?
I just take time when I want it. I just say I'm gonna do this, and I go do what I prefer to do. Now I'm very blessed to have a relationship that facilitates that, where we have this mutual understanding that if one of us says I'm going shopping, or I'm going here, I'm doing this, or I'm gonna hang out with so and so, we just go do it, and that's that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like if I just said, as soon as the show's over, I'm gonna go to the beach and watch the sunset. Okay. And usually I'll extend an invitation. Hey, do you guys want to come with me? And they come, maybe they don't, but that's how I roll, and it kind of works. So I know that if I am getting to a point where, oh man, I need to get out. I need to get out of the house or whatever. I make that known
Yeah.
and I just go. And I think it's just the doing of it. You just have to do it. You have to say,
Yeah.
I'm going to make a Starbucks run, or I'm going to go do some retail therapy, or I'm going to be out in the garden, or I'm going to go for a hike or a walk or whatever, and then just do it. And the chores be damned, and other things like that.
That's another thing. Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you said that because another thing I think is letting things go.
Hmm.
Like everything doesn't have to get done, and
Yes,
it doesn't always have to get done now.
right.
Like sometimes you can just let it go. Like it's not a big deal, you
Yeah,
know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You don't have to put the dog out all the time. So, like, nobody cares if there's dishes in your sink. Nobody cares. They really don't care. I have been into many a dirty house and just didn't care that the house was dirty. I was more interested in being around or spending time or having a friendship with the person that I was interacting with. And it's the same way. Most people, they just don't care. It's like they don't care what you're wearing.
It's true.
They just don't care. And we're
Yeah,
told to think they care, and we're told to pay attention to this, and I think it's a scam.
I mean, it's true there are probably some people who are judgmental, but but if somebody actually wants to spend time with you, they don't care.
Right. The
They really
people,
don't. They're not going to judge you. They don't. It's not a big deal.
what's that Winnie the Pooh quote? It goes, the people who matter, don't care, and the people who care don't matter.
Truth.
So there you have it. Oh, oh, there you go.
So
I
what's a good shift that like what's the takeaway that you have about this whole time conversation, Marshall?
I want to tell people that we need to stop viewing time through other people's lenses. You know,
Mm,
if you waste time but you enjoy wasting it, it's not wasted time. Stop viewing it through the lens of your employer, who frankly would let you go if it saved them a dollar in most cases. Um, view things through your own lens. And don't be afraid to say, you know what, I'm going to carve time out because I only have the time that I make. I'm going to make time to do what I want to do and then just do it. That's my
yeah.
shift. That's my thing on it.
I think we didn't talk a lot about this, but we kind of talked around it. And so this is kind of my shift, and this is the thing that I would kind of push people to consider is what are your priorities? What is most important to you? Um, and how does the way that you spend time reflect those priorities? Is it reflecting those priorities? How can you make your time spent better reflect your priorities? So if you really want to do something, if something is actually important to you, but you've been putting it off, it's not really that important to you.
Right.
And so I would just urge you to kind of restructure how you're doing things and spend your time on the things that really matter to you.
I agree. Before we wrap up, then, I've got a question for you. It's a fun one. What is your favorite
Okay.
song about time?
I think I'm gonna have to go with time after time.
That's a pretty good one. That's up there. Mine is Time Stands Still by Rush. I love it. And I love the lyric. I listen to it at the end of every summer. And it goes something like, summer's fading fast, night's growing colder. I love that
Mm,
line. And it just, I don't know. I love the song. It makes me think of my life and how it's passing. And I can't slow down time, but I can enjoy it more. So
yeah,
there you go.
cool.
Well, that's it. Everybody, this is Marshall and Alexis, and this was Good Shift. I want to invite you again to hit that like button and that subscribe button. If you are watching this show in the future, please feel free to post your questions and comments in the future because we will get notifications and we'll come back and we'll react and respond to your comments and questions. And hey, maybe you have a great question or something to say that can become the subject of a future episode. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on the next Good Shift.
On the 17th, St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, that's
Okay.
right. Yeah, I have to give you guys the date. Right, that's right. St. Patrick's Day, and we'll see you then. All right, good catch. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye bye.